Have you ever wondered who actually wrote the tale of Sleeping Beauty? We were told since childhood, the Brothers Grimm. But that's not true, and they weren't even the first. Yes, Charles Perrault gave Europe that sweet, romantic version where the prince woke up the beauty with a kiss. But the real truth is completely different, and you won't find it on Google. Modern fairy tales are just embellished copies of old legends. And the real story was called The Sun, the Moon, and Talia. And everything was completely different there. The beauty didn't wake up from a gentle kiss. She was sleeping, immersed in an unwakeable sleep. When the king entered the abandoned house, he didn't save her. He took advantage of her defenselessness. He raped her, and then left her in the same state and drove on. While she was still sleeping, Talia gave birth to 2 children. And when the king's real wife found out about this, she ordered her husband to be fed the flesh of her own children, and Talia herself to be killed. This was the original Sleeping Beauty. Not a magical love story, but a dark and cruel legend that was turned into a children's fairy tale. Do you think that only the story of Sleeping Beauty was so cruel? You are mistaken. Another famous fairy tale, Cinderella, is also not at all the same as we know it. That version with a pumpkin, a fairy, and a cute glass slipper was invented much later. It was smoothed out, the edges were cleaned, and made sweet for children. But the real truth is completely different, and you will not find it on Google. In the original story, the scene with the slipper was a terrible test. Remember, whoever wears it will become the prince's bride? Well, Cinderella's sisters were ready to do anything to get into this role. And now attention, they did the most terrible thing. One sister took an axe and chopped off half of her foot. The other cut off half of her heel with a kitchen knife. And you know what the most terrible thing is? It was not their own idea. It was advised to do it by their own mother. She literally ordered her daughters to mutilate themselves for the sake of power and status. These were the fairy tales of the past. And you must admit, it's hard to call them fairy tales because this word is associated with something good and bright. In fact, those ancient legends are more like horror than children's bedtime stories. Do you think that only Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella had dark versions? Back then, you hadn't heard the real story of Snow White. Since childhood, we have been shown a beautiful fairy tale about a girl with white skin, red lips, and a kind heart. But the original legend was not like that at all, and you won't find it on Google. The modern version has turned Snow White into a soft children's fairy tale. But in ancient texts, it is a story about envy, poison, and death. Remember how the evil stepmother wanted to get rid of Snow White. In the cartoons, she gives her an apple. And in the original, she ordered the huntsman to rip open the girl's chest and tear out her lungs and liver. She wanted these organs cooked and served to her for dinner. Yes, the stepmother wanted to eat Snow White's entrails. And when the prince found the girl and brought her to his castle, the ending was far from happy. The evil queen was invited to the wedding and forced to dance in red-hot iron shoes until she fell dead. That was the real plot. Not a good fairy tale for children, but a creepy legend of cannibalism and torture. Fairy tales of the past are more like horror than children's stories. And this is the truth that they have tried to hide from us for centuries. You're probably thinking, okay, the fairy tales of the past were scary. But aren't modern cartoons completely different kind, bright and warm? Then remember one of the most beloved cartoons of its time. In 1981, Disney released The Fox and the Hound, a story about the friendship of a hunting dog and a wild fox. Millions of children around the world watched this cartoon, cried, and rejoiced with the characters. But the real story was not like that at all, and you won't find it on Google. In the legend, on the basis of which the cartoon was created, the dog and the fox were never friends. The dog chased the fox all day. It was exhausted, it was even hit by a car, but despite the pain and wounds, it continued the pursuit. In the finale, the fox simply lost strength and fell to the ground. And the wounded dog could not stand it and also fell from above, covering it with its body. And then the hunter caught up with him. He shot the fox immediately and took the dog home. It seems that the story has a logical conclusion: hunting prey, a faithful dog next to its owner. But the real horror is just beginning, because the hunter did not save the dog. He killed it. The hunter was old. In a few days, he was to be sent to a nursing home, and they did not allow animals there. The wounded dog needed care, and the owner could no longer provide for him. And then the man took the dog outside the house, as if for a walk. The dog was happy, licking its owner's hands, and the owner simply pointed a gun at it and shot it. That was the real story. Not a good fairy tale about friendship, but a cold and cruel reality. And there are countless such tales, legends, and stories. The truth is always either embellished or completely rewritten in order not to create unnecessary noise. This is exactly what happened with another world-famous fairy tale that you know for sure. You have probably read it, or at least once seen the cartoon adaptation by Disney. It is about the Little Mermaid. In a modern cartoon, everything looks magical. A young mermaid falls in love with a prince, fights for her love, and, despite the difficulties, gets a happy ending. But the original story by Hans Christian Andersen was completely different, and you will not find it on Google. The real Little Mermaid did not get her love. She gave up her voice, lost the opportunity to live in the sea, and walked on land as if every step was pain, as if her wounded feet touched the blades of knives. The prince, for whom she sacrificed everything, married someone else, and she was given a choice: kill the prince and return to the sea, or die. The Little Mermaid could not kill the one she loved, and then she went ashore, watched her lover's wedding, and threw herself into the sea, turning into foam. No happy ending. No, they lived happily ever after. Only pain, sacrifice, and death. That was the real story. Cruel and merciless, like most fairy tales in their original form. The fairy tales that we have considered kind and magical since childhood were originally cruel and scary. They were rewritten, softened, and embellished to hide the dark truth. Here, on this channel, you will hear exactly that. The truth that is being hidden. The truth that you will not find anywhere else. Subscribe so you do not miss new stories. And remember, Google will not show this.